David, we've got an update now on the situation at that campus and an update on what the Conservative activist Charlie Kirk has faced. We have a statement here from Donald Trump who says, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he's no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you." So an update there from Donald Trump that Charlie Kirk, the 31-year-old conservative influencer, writer, commentator, is dead following that incident at Utah Valley University. A horrific incident, David. Those images of him being shot circulating on social media. And now Donald Trump has confirmed in what a post that he has put out saying the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. Charlie Kirk was 31 years old. He is survived by his wife, Erica, and 2 young children.
Take a moment, Yalda, and remind our audience how influential Charlie Kirk was. As you say, he's a 31-year-old father. He was an activist, a writer and a broadcaster, hosted a daily podcast and radio programme, The Charlie Kirk Show. He was a very high-profile supporter of President Trump and his various policies. He founded and was the president of a non-profit organisation called Turning Point, which promotes conservative ideas among high school and college students. He authored a number of books, one of them simply entitled The MAGA Doctrine, and was followed by nearly 20 million young people in America. It would be difficult to exaggerate the extent of his influence, but his life has been cut tragically short this afternoon at Utah Valley University. He was on the first stop of what he called the American Comeback Tour, addressing a crowd of 2,000 to 3,000 people when a shot rang out. The videos circulating online show him impacted by that, and there is an audible panic and shock among the crowd as they flee, really, in fear for their own lives. Initially, we were told one suspect was in custody. We're told that is no longer the case. So it may not yet be a secure zone there, but right now the thoughts of the White House, as we can clearly hear, are with Charlie Kirk's wife and with his family. President Trump knew him very well. Shortly after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in July of last year, Charlie Kirk spoke at a rally in support of him. He was a very good friend of Vice President J.D. Vance. So the White House is this evening in mourning for a friend and someone who was a strong advocate of this administration's policies.
David, I'm just going to put that tweet of Donald Trump on Truth Social on our screen so we can have another look. In the last few minutes, Donald Trump confirming that Charlie Kirk is dead. He says the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he's no longer with us. My sympathies go out to his wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you. So a heartfelt statement there from the President of the United States to Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old conservative activist, writer, author, podcaster who was shot near the neck this afternoon during a student Q&A at Utah Valley University in Utah. That was according to bystanders. And then we started to see the images appear on social media, horrific images of him being shot in the neck. The images you're seeing on the screen are just moments before that incident took place. And David, America in shock tonight. We've also heard from the former Vice President Kamala Harris, who shared a message and offered prayers earlier for Charlie Kirk after he was shot at the college event. She said political violence has no place in America. It just gives you a sense, following this horrific incident of this young man, 31 years old, with two young children, left now with his wife, Erica, of the political violence, the gun violence that has gripped and continues to grip America.
Yes, it is interesting to hear from the former Vice President Kamala Harris referencing gun violence in America, because we've heard similar comments this evening from the Republican side of US politics, and to a large extent the shooting dead of Charlie Kirk illustrates the great divide that exists in American politics. It is such a polarised place, and it is a place that remains paralysed to some extent on the issue of access to guns. And so this is a moment of real jeopardy when you throw into that mix the extent of Charlie Kirk's influence among young people in America. Nearly 20 million followers online on the various platforms. And a moment for America really to ask itself the question again, is the death of a young father going to be the thing that brings them closer together, or is it going to be the thing that causes the divide to grow even deeper? Because so often in this place, even terrible tragedy is very quickly politicised. But this evening, the White House is focused on the personal, with President Trump expressing his sympathy to the wife and family of Charlie Kirk, paying a glowing tribute to a man who was very vocal in his support of Donald Trump throughout his various election campaigns and during his terms in the White House. Charlie Kirk was a very good friend of Vice President J.D. Vance and Donald Trump Jr. as well. They participated together in a number of events. I've been looking at the videos this evening, and so this really will be something that has caused immense shock to the Trump administration and to many across the United States this evening.
Indeed. And David, we have been getting some reaction from Washington to the killing there of 31-year-old Charlie Kirk. Let's just have a listen.
There's no reaction to what happened to Charlie Kirk today.
It's horrendous. To see it up close, good God. You know, people are trying to shut down free speech making like Charlie Kirk. There's no place in this society. This is what happens in third world countries. But so sad for his family and his children.
Do you think this country has a problem with political violence?
Absolutely. You know, put the handcuffs on the police and all this, it was in a gun-free zone too. And but a guy like that meant so much to this country. To take him down, you saw what happened in Charlotte, cashless bail. It's no excuse for it. It's time for people to take the country back. And but it's horrendous. And to see the up-close shooting and to see what happened in Charlotte, we've got to deal with it.
Thank you, Congressman.
David, we can just hear some of the shock there as the realization that Charlie Kirk has been shot dead, that images of him emerging on social media about an hour ago, shot near the neck while seated during a live Q&A session at Utah Valley University. And it looked horrific at the time. 31-year-old confirmed dead now by President of the United States, Donald Trump, who put out a statement on Truth Social and said the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. He goes on to say no one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. David, just help us understand the influence of Charlie Kirk. You spoke a little bit there about the number of followers. He has millions and millions of followers on social media, but he really understood an aspect and a part of America that few did. And he was part of a movement of young people, conservative young people, very close, as you say, to Vice President J.D. Vance, and clearly admired by the US President Donald Trump as well.
Yes, and I think President Trump is correct in stating that perhaps few others understood the youth and the heart of conservative America, certainly in these days, more than Charlie Kirk did. He had an immense following online, nearly 20 million followers on the various platforms. He hosted a daily podcast and radio program which consistently appeared in the top 10 in terms of audience figures. He authored a number of books. He was a very vocal supporter of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, appearing alongside them regularly at various events. He appeared at a rally in support of Donald Trump just days after the attempted assassination of the president, or the then Republican candidate, back in July of last year. And it is an influence that really was extending beyond the United States as well because of his presence online. For example, back in June of this year, Charlie Kirk spoke at the Oxford Union in London. So it is not just those in America who will be shocked by the fact that he has been shot dead in Utah. It is his followers right across the world who supported his conservative ideas. He was the founder and went on to become president of a non-profit organisation called Turning Point. It was the fastest growing youth activist movement in the United States. That organisation promoting conservative ideas among high school and college students. And he had begun a tour that he described as the American Comeback Tour, and was on the very first leg of that when this shooting happened at Utah Valley University with such tragic consequences this afternoon.
Yeah, a tragic event. And we're just getting some updates from the local mayor saying the authorities are still searching for the suspect. As you said, David, we understood that someone had been taken into custody. We now understand that the authorities are still searching for the suspect. You can see live images there. The National Guard alongside the FBI and a number of other police enforcement and other authorities scouring and searching the area for the suspect. But Donald Trump, in the last few minutes, the US president, confirmed that Charlie Kirk has died following that shooting at the event at Utah Valley University. We'll leave you with these images of Charlie Kirk.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Well, at 10 o'clock, this is Sky News at 10, our top story tonight. And breaking news from the United States, Charlie Kirk, a leading conservative activist and prominent supporter of Donald Trump, is dead after being shot at a college event in Utah. Well, heavily armed SWAT teams are at the scene tonight, searching for the suspect on the campus. So let's start News at 10 then with that breaking news from the United States, where the right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk has died after being shot while he was speaking at an event in Utah. The US President Donald Trump has written in a post on Truth Social, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you." Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins, a massive influence then on the right of politics, especially amongst younger people, and a shock tonight for his supporters and indeed for the Trump family, David.
Yes, there will be so many questions about the political impact of this, but they will wait a little longer because right now it is a security issue. The fact that law enforcement is attempting to find a gunman or gunwoman on the campus in Utah where Charlie Kirk has been sadly shot dead. He was seated in a tent fielding questions from the audience when a single shot rang out, impacting him in the neck. There was an immediate response, as you would expect, from the audience, absolute panic and chaos as they fled for their lives. And people are in disbelief that this could have happened because Charlie Kirk was a person of enormous influence, not just across the United States, but with conservative and particularly conservative young people across the globe. He was on the first stage of what he called the American Comeback Tour, addressing an audience of 2,000 to 3,000 people at Utah Valley University. When the shot was fired this afternoon, he was immediately taken to a hospital nearby, and within the last hour, President Trump has confirmed that he has lost his life in this tragic shooting.
And the event he was at, we understand, had been met with divided opinions on campus, David. An online petition calling for university administrators to bar Kirk from appearing had received nearly 1,000 signatures. The university had issued a statement citing First Amendment rights to allow him to speak, a commitment to free speech, intellectual inquiry and constructive dialogue were the words they used. But in terms of the security he had some private security there, presumably some from the university, but this will be amongst the questions, certainly, for the authorities this evening.
Yes, and of course it is very difficult to secure a site outdoors. How do you lock down an entire university campus? How do you secure when you have an audience of 2,000 to 3,000 people? And when you look at some of the videos circulating online, if he had security with him, a security detail, there is no sign of them in the pictures. In fact, he appears to have been wounded for some time before anyone reached him as he sat under the tent where he was addressing the audience when the shots rang out. But of course, it highlights just how deeply polarised America is in terms of its politics, and also what a dangerous place this is, still paralysed over the issue of access to guns. And those are all questions that are going to be asked in the aftermath of this shooting. There was also real confusion because initially we were told a suspect had been taken into custody. In fact, we saw some pictures which appeared to show a suspect being taken into custody, but the university has since confirmed that there is not a suspect in custody, and that is why you are seeing the National Guard, the FBI and the various law enforcement agencies responding to the extent that they are on the Utah Valley University campus this evening.
Well, Nigel Farage, David, has just put this out as well in tribute. This is a very dark day for American democracy. I am desperately sad for Charlie, his wife and children, issuing a picture, as you can see, of the two together. But in terms of the work of Charlie Kirk, we know that he'd helped run a Get Out the Vote campaign for Mr Trump's 2024 campaign, trying to energise disaffected Conservative voters who rarely vote. He'd supported him in 2016 as well. But really, you know, the fundamental effort of his work was venturing onto liberal-leaning campuses where many other Republicans feared to tread.
And I think it would be virtually impossible to exaggerate the influence that Charlie Kirk had. He had an online following of nearly 20 million people at home and abroad. He hosted a daily podcast and radio programme, The Charlie Kirk Show. He was the founder and president of a non-profit organisation called Turning Point, which promotes conservative ideas among high school and college students. And of course, in terms of profile, he was very vocal in his support of the Republican candidate and subsequently President of the United States, Donald Trump, who has paid tribute to him this evening. He spoke at a rally in support of Donald Trump just days after he survived an assassination attempt in July of last year. He was very good friends with US Vice President J.D. Vance, with Donald Trump Jr., the president's son. So a person who was right at the heart of this administration, even though he didn't hold office in it. But because of the extent of influence he had, Donald Trump suggesting that no one understood or had the heart of this generation of young people in America more than Charlie Kirk did.
Well, we know during this intended speech at Utah Valley University, there were slogans behind him, the American comeback and prove me wrong. Certainly social media video showed him apparently being shot in the neck and moving backwards. Let's listen then to witnesses who were at the event.
I was watching from pretty close up and I heard a pop and I thought, no, that nobody's shooting firecrackers, right? This is the middle of the day. And then I watched a fountain of blood come out of the side of his neck like a water fountain. And it was surreal. Everyone dropped. And I was like, where's the gunman? I don't see any gunman. And then I dropped.
Yes, some very difficult testimony there of those who witnessed this event, as you say, an enormous influence on the right of politics, and somebody who'd worked with one of Donald Trump's children, worked for him too. You know, what does this mean in terms of the polarisation now of the United States and the impact that this will have on his supporters?
And I think it is a moment of real jeopardy for the United States. We've known for a very long time that this is a deeply polarised place. I think it's why you are hearing both Republicans and Democrats of office in the United States speaking this evening about the danger of gun violence, because they're very aware of how deeply polarised America is. We're also very conscious of the ongoing debate that exists about gun crime. Just 10 days ago, we were reporting the latest school shooting and again raising the question about access to guns in this country. But America perhaps tonight must now pause and ask itself the question, is the shooting dead of Charlie Kirk, a conservative influencer who was known at home and abroad, going to be the thing that brings this country together, or could it actually drive the country further apart? We've seen so often in the past how tragedy can be politicised here, but in many ways this is not a moment for politics. It's a moment to pause and reflect on the fact that a 31-year-old father of young children has been shot dead on a university campus in Utah, and a moment for people across America and across the world perhaps to think about just how polarising politics can be and whether or not there is a way to find their way back closer to some sort of middle ground.
The Conservative Political Action Conference, we are deeply saddened by the loss of our dear friend Charlie Kirk. He was a great young man, father, husband and patriot who we were honoured to stand alongside in the fight for freedom. Our prayers are with his friends and family, especially his wife and 2 young children. God be with his family in this most difficult time. We will never forget Charlie Kirk's work for the soul of the nation. That is CPAC, as I said, the Conservative Political Action Conference. And this shooting David, coming amid a spike in political violence, you might argue, in the United States across all parts of the spectrum. The attacks included an assassination back in June of a Minnesota state politician and her husband, firebombing of a Colorado parade to demand the release of hostages in Gaza, a fire set at the house of Pennsylvania's governor who was Jewish back in April, and of course going right back to the shooting too of Donald Trump during a campaign rally last year. You know, there is a real concern now, isn't there, about what happens next and the reaction that this will bring. In terms of the work that he did for the last election for Donald Trump, Mr Kirk called the Trump versus Kamala Harris choice a spiritual battle, saying he demanded a Christian country. I mean, what was the positioning of him? What were his views?
Well, he was certainly a very deeply religious person, obviously to the evangelical right of US politics. In fact, just 2 hours before this shooting took place, his wife posted a verse from the Bible online, "God is our refuge and strength," from the book of Psalms. So even before she found herself in the throes of tragedy, she was posting her religious expression online this afternoon in the United States. And so often that, of course, is one of the issues. The fact that politics and religion are often brought together, and it's not just about ideology then, it's about something much deeper. People believe they are battling for religious liberty and for their rights. It's not just about politics, if I can put it that way. And in many ways, Charlie Kirk epitomised all of that battle. He had a huge following online, hugely influential. His podcast always in the top 10 in terms of audience figures, and yet he was also quite a controversial figure, very outspoken on issues like the January 6th raid on the US Capitol, disputing frequently the result of the 2020 election. At that stage, posting online at one stage that he was encouraging bus loads of patriots, as he described them, to make their way to the US Capitol in support of Donald Trump, claiming that he had been robbed of the election. He spoke quite often about gender issues, all of that fueling a mixture of support and opposition, because several thousand people had signed a petition ahead of his event at the Utah Valley University this afternoon, opposing his presence there.
Well, the group Turning Point, which was set up, I think, back in 2012, wasn't it, by Charlie Kirk, when he was just 18 years old, was known for flamboyant displays of pyrotechnics and so on, anything to, introduce politics effectively to young people. How much did his views, do you think, also inform President Trump's battles with, certain universities in America about the right to free speech?
Well, I think they would have considerably informed those views. We've seen a constant battle between this administration and the various universities across the United States, particularly those that are more to the left or to the centre, who are more liberal in their views. And Charlie Kirk would have been the complete opposite of all of that. The views he was expressing this afternoon at the university in Utah would have been highly controversial to many people, and yet we see from the pictures that there were more than 2,000, perhaps as many as 3,000 people in the audience who'd come to listen to him. In fact, he was very well known for being open to debate with people who held an opposing view, and it appears today may in fact have been engaged in a debate with some members of the audience, certainly was at least fielding questions from some members of the audience when the shot rang out and he visibly slumped in the chair. You could see the response of the audience immediately. There was chaos and panic on the campus, and as we can now see, there is a very large-scale security response underway. In addition to the local police, the FBI has been deployed. FBI Director Kash Patel says they are responding and will support the investigation fully. There are members of the National Guard on campus now too, and that will, of course, be to some extent because authorities continue to search for a suspect. There was confusion initially when we were told a suspect had been taken into custody. We're told that is no longer the case. So while there are many political questions, there is a security issue at the heart of this right now, as there is a hunt on for whoever carried out this shooting.
Yes, certainly a man was detained during the event. Attendees there thought he was the shooter. Police later confirming that he was not. Suspicion now that the shooter could have been some distance away. But the pictures show the Sorensen Center courtyard on the Utah Valley University campus. A single shot, as you suggested, rang out. Kirk seen reaching up with his right hand as a large volume of blood gushed from the left side of his neck. American comeback there you see on that tarpaulin. Prove me wrong, the other signs there. This the work of Charlie Kirk. Just had words also from Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader here in the UK. There are no words good enough to express the horror of this. The killing of Charlie Kirk is a blow to everything Western civilization stands for. Open discourse, robust debate and peaceful dissent. He lived his life by those very principles, no matter the danger it put him in. This may have happened far from our shores, but the rising intolerance of opposing views affects us all. We cannot turn a blind eye to it. My thoughts are with Charlie's family, his wife Erica, and their children. The words there of Kemi Badenoch tonight, raising the spectre of the polarisation of society, both in the States and indeed elsewhere on a number of issues. So the work now, David, as you're suggesting, is to find whoever did this, and swiftly, presumably.
Oh, yes, and as you can see, the scale of the security response is enormous, Anna. Full-scale manhunt underway on the campus and surrounding area at Utah Valley University, where the shooting took place this afternoon, with such tragic consequences. We were told a suspect was initially in custody. We're told that is no longer the case. It would appear that someone may have been inadvertently detained who was not the person who had carried out the shooting, and therefore there will be serious concern that this is not yet a secure zone. But beyond all of that, as we've been discussing, there are so many political questions about what this means for a deeply polarised America, a place that is paralysed, it would seem, on the issue of gun violence, on the debate around access to guns. We are hearing senior politicians from both sides of the House talking about their concerns about gun violence, but we've heard that so many times before, and one has to wonder what will be the issue. Will there be an event like this, a tragedy like this, that will be the tipping point for America, that will make people move back to the centre, to a place of middle ground where there can be healthy political discourse? Or could it in fact be yet another thing to drive the wedge deeper, to cause an even greater divide between the left and the right across the United States of America, and indeed further afield, as the leader of the opposition has been suggesting, because Charlie Kirk was not just a person of enormous influence in the United States, with nearly 20 million followers online, a writer, a broadcaster, an activist. He was also known globally because of his online presence, speaking just in June of this year at the Oxford Union in London.
Well, he came from Chicago, didn't he? Attracted to politics early on, volunteering for the campaign of a US Senate member, Illinois Republican Mark Kirk. No relation, in fact, during his high school years. And he set up Turning Point in suburban Chicago back in 2012, aged 18, along with a Tea Party activist. Not immediately successful, but then Kirk's efforts confronting liberals in the academic world eventually won over an influential set of conservative financiers. And certainly he has been accused by critics of promoting falsehoods and conspiracy theories on issues including COVID-19, climate change and the 2020 US election. Well, joining us now is Tiana Lau and Laura Lowe, who I understand were at the event. Tell us what you saw.
Yeah, so we were into the second question, and that was when we heard a gunshot. But during that time, oh no, we maybe thought it was a firecracker.
I thought it was a firecracker, so I looked up in the sky. That's why I kind of missed what happened. But
yeah. And then all of a sudden, like we looked to each other and we were like, okay, like it seems like it's fine. And then we saw everyone ducking down. And so we ducked down as well, and everyone started crying, and everyone was saying, get down, get down. And then everyone just started rushing to inside the building. And so we did too, just crying. Yeah.
And could you see Charlie Kirk at this point? Could you see what had happened to him?
I didn't really see it because it happened too fast. And then I was also just looking at the person who's asking the question. So I didn't really get that part.
And then also as well, we were looking at him directly, like we were looking at the person asking the question, but we believe that the gunshot maybe could have came from the left side. And so we couldn't see from that angle because we were sitting on his right side.
Yeah.
Well, clearly there was panic, people ducking, as you said, running to escape, going back into the university campus. You know, on reflection, how are you feeling now after hearing the news that he's died?
I was really shocked. I was on a call with my mom, and then all of a sudden she just told me that he's dead, because we really was wishing that he's still alive, because we were like, he didn't get shot in the chest or something. So I don't know. It was just.
Yeah, I definitely started crying. Like it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you were on, it's still a human life. So I was really sad to hear the news from a friend that told me about it.
And explain why you were, attracted to go to his event today, what you were interested in hearing him say.
Yeah, we were both. So we consider ourselves non-political, but we did want to go see a polite debate. We thought that it was going to be peaceful. And of course, we didn't expect anything like this was going to happen at a small college to us. Yeah. And so we just went there because we were interested. We saw him online, and it seemed like there was a huge crowd forming as well.
Yeah.
Well, he's had a huge influence, huge numbers of followers. What impact do you think this will have on, political discourse in campuses like yours and across America?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I do think maybe in the future we'll improve on like security checks a little bit more, because it was more like an open space. So I'm kind of concerned about what's this school going to happen, like just like tomorrow. Am I going to be able to go on campus? Is it going to be safe? Or what's going to happen after this?
Well, it does appear that the suspect has not yet been apprehended. So presumably, potentially you won't be going to campus tomorrow. But does it feel like politics in America is febrile right now? Do you think, does it feel divided?
I think that, it's always been divided. And that is why I try to stay away from that type of stuff. I mean, it was really scary because especially during the second question, he was talking about a transgender shooter during that time. And like shortly after that, that was when they shot. Yeah. So I definitely do think that definitely on the conservative side, they are going to start blaming the LGBTQ community as well. But I don't know how the other community feels about that, but I do think that there is a possibility for a divide in America right now, especially with this.
And he was known, as I was starting to say there, for speaking about some of the conspiracy theories surrounding things like COVID-19 or even the Trump election, January the 6th and so on. Is that, the influence he had, would that have drawn people to those views, do you think?
Oh, I definitely think so. Yeah. I mean, people were shouting USA, USA, Donald Trump in the beginning. So
yeah, people were really hyped up and then cheering all kinds of political stuff in the beginning.
Yeah, especially considering that Utah is a primarily Republican state. So everyone was really excited to come.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you talking to us. It's obviously been a shocking occasion for you, everyone who was there, and indeed your university. So we really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's speak now to Jack Ross, CEO of the UK wing of Turning Point, the organisation run by Charlie Kirk. You know, this is an extraordinary and deeply sad day for everyone in your organisation.
It's absolutely shocking. We're heartbroken over here in the UK. We haven't had a lot of contact with the US branch, but I know they're completely devastated. Charlie was really the driving force behind Turning Point, and it was so impactful. He led the charge. Personally, I think he was the best debater in the world, and the world's a worse place without him. Unfortunately, there's no reason for this to have happened. It's obviously, we don't want to speculate about why, but I think it's quite obvious. But it's heartbreaking, completely heartbreaking. He was a fantastic man. He took the time to help us in Britain. He didn't have to. He had such a challenge, especially in the States, trying to push everything towards conservatism and Christianity, but he still took the time to help us, to promote us, to train us, and to push us to be the best sort of political activists that we could be.
Well, tell us about the organisation that he founded back in 2012 in a suburb in Chicago, and what its role was in the UK.
Certainly, I think it very much is a rags to riches story with Charlie. I remember he actually told me once when they first started out at Turning Point USA, they had zero funding, and they'd do tabling stands where they'd go to universities and speak to students about campaigning. And so for all the equipment they used to go to the university, they'd buy it in the morning, and then they'd have to go and return it at the end of the day. And then to build that up to a because they couldn't afford to keep it, but then to build that up to a multi-million-dollar organisation which does a hell of a lot of good across the country. It brings people together. It created communities on campuses, university campuses, and helped students feel like they weren't alone. People who were being attacked for their views finally had a group who they could socialise with, who they could have events with, and started to actually be able to voice their opinions, not feel they would be discriminated against. We have a similar organisation in the UK, so the idea we have is to promote conservatism and Christianity and patriotism to young people and provide a network where young people who share our values can come together in a positive environment and not feel like they're going to be attacked for their views, and also find ways to positively challenge each other as well as engage in debates, et cetera, et cetera.
And is that getting more traction? Clearly, even tonight on Sky News, we focused on immigration as a theme, for example, elements like that. Have that drawn people to your organisation?
Certainly, I think thanks to people like Charlie. So Charlie, as I said, is the best debater in the world. He was able to help arm a lot of people with facts. And actually, obviously it is speculation, but I imagine one of the reasons he was killed is because they couldn't defeat him in a debate. I've never seen anyone be able to stump him. He's been able to answer on so many topics across the board. And, you know, it's thanks to Charlie that we've enjoyed the success in the UK and also in America. And certainly, as I said, he helped arm people who are maybe politically illiterate or young people who weren't interested in politics, helped get them to understand in a youth-friendly and social media-friendly way about very important issues, issues which had previously been swept under the carpet, particularly around things like economics, helping people understand about taxes and capitalism. And yeah, as I said, it's just appalling what's happened to him.
Well, I can hear you're upset, so apologies for the timing of this question, which was really, what about the critique of the work he did in terms of promoting conspiracy theories on things like COVID-19, climate change, the 2020 US election, and this idea of free speech absolutism, but only when somebody approves of your views? I mean, there is a real debate about that as well.
So, obviously, America is a different situation to Britain. They do promote, they have a lot better free speech laws than I think we do. Certainly, we've seen the two-tier policing as well as clamp down on people's viewpoints in Britain. Charlie, I didn't agree with everything Charlie said, but then that's the beauty of the organisation Turning Point. You don't have to agree 100% with everyone. It's about having the ability to debate people. And as you said, Charlie supposedly had conspiracy theories, but people could go and debate him. He went to universities so people could challenge his views. And as I said, people might call it conspiracy theories, but I've not seen him being stumped yet or Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Jack Ross, CEO of the UK wing of Turning Point. A very difficult day for you and all in your organisation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, joining me now is Democrat and lawyer for the US Commission on Civil Rights, Michael Yaki. Welcome to you. Your reaction then to what has happened?
It's a terrible tragedy, but one of a list of terrible tragedies that the United States is unfortunately, getting used to. We had 2 Democratic lawmakers shot earlier this year. The governor of Pennsylvania was in his house with his children and family when someone tried to set fire to it. And today, Charlie Kirk, who admittedly is not someone who is someone I would support, but I do admire the fact what he did and his commitment to his cause. And he certainly has a large following and people who are devoted to him, as you just saw from the previous speaker. And it's a terrible tragedy for his family. It's a terrible tragedy for his supporters. And it's just a terrible day in the United States.
Well, he was a supporter of the right to bear arms, was he not? He suggested that incidents of gun crime were worth that, effectively. But, what will the impact of this be, do you think, on the discourse, which, as you suggested, is, for some, dangerous?
I mean, this has been, like I said, it's been an extremely politically violent year, or actually 18 months, beginning with the near assassination of then candidate Trump during a campaign. Again, to the political assassinations of 2 lawmakers in Minnesota, and then today to Charlie Kirk. I mean, people are trying to liken this to the political and social upheavals and violence of the 60s and 70s. I think this is very different. We're dealing with people who are in their own silos. They're listening to a feedback loop of whatever conspiracy theories they may or may not have on both the left and the right. And you have, in the United States, easy access to guns. And this is, something that unfortunately can happen. And I'm hoping that what becomes of this, because he was so beloved by people on the right, because he was so close to the president of the United States, maybe this finally sparks the conversation that we've been trying to have in the United States for the last probably 50, 60 years, which is, what do we do about political, and what do we do about gun violence in the United States? We made the remark about Charlie Kirk's remarks about the Second Amendment and a life here and there may be worth it. I think today, I think there are a lot of people who might disagree with that, who follow Charlie Kirk today, because this is probably someone who we don't know who the suspect is. What we do know is they had a firearm. It was probably a long gun, like a rifle, and it was something where we'll find out that they had easy access to it. And we cannot live in a country, we cannot have a true democracy if people can disagree with you by the barrel of a gun. That's not how we should live as anyone in any democracy in this world, and certainly not in my country, the United States. So it's a terrible, tragic day. Will this be something that becomes a place where the president can take leadership and deal with the issue of gun violence and political violence and what it means going forward? We don't know. What we do know is it's a terrible loss to the country, to his supporters, to the president of the United States, who was very close to him, to Charlie Kirk's family and friends. But where we go from here, I couldn't begin to fathom.
Well, while you're talking, we're watching pictures of the roof of the White House in Washington. As you can see, the US flag flying at half-mast there. We know that Turning Point, Charlie Kirk's organisation, had enthusiastically backed Donald Trump after he clinched the Republican nomination back in 2016. Mr Kirk served as a personal aide to Donald Trump Jr., the president's eldest son, during the general election campaign. And Mr Trump and his son, always effusive, often spoke at Turning Point conferences. J.D. Vance as well, we know, was close to Charlie Kirk. So this is, in effect, a personal tragedy for the Trump family, who were so close to him. We know that Charlie Kirk had run out a Get Out the Vote campaign for the last election in which Mr Trump was successful. So this really goes to the heart and soul of Trump's America, doesn't it?
It really does. And you know, again, I disagreed strongly with Charlie Kirk, but I do admire the fact that he did something that I didn't think possible. He helped attract young people to his cause. You know, normally we always think that the younger are going to be more liberal liberal in their views, but he was someone who was able to sort of capture the folks who were maybe upset about the way the world was to them and their worldview, and turn it into instead of political apathy, into political action. Some of us condemn him for it, but at the same time, he did what a democracy should do, which is he went and performed at the ballot box. And again, that's where political disagreement, political discord, and political policy should be solved, not at the barrel of a gun, as it may have been done today. Again, we don't know the motivation, we don't know who did this, why it was done, but more than likely, it's probably because of some vehement disagreement on some political issue with him, and someone who for reasons unknown to us right now, decided they wanted to solve it through assassination, which, like I said, is a terrible legacy that this country has, and one that I pray to God one day will end.
And Michael, just one final thought. In a world where many nations are lamenting the disengagement of young people in politics for whatever reason, and whatever your views on Charlie Kirk, how important was he, do you think, in energising university campuses to start thinking about the political world?
Well, I think in some ways, putting on my political analyst hat, some of it's overstated. I don't think that it was something that was by a large majority of people on college campuses. But I do think what he did is he did something that every good political operative does. He turned what was there into actual votes, motivating people who are upset or disagree, even if they are a minority or a bare majority, but turning them into actual people who walk to the polls or fill out the application, the ballot, and mail it. That is something that only the very best of us in politics can manage to motivate someone to do. He did that, and for that he is well recognized. He was well rewarded. He is someone who people recognize was effective and did build a sort of movement of his own. But again, where this goes in the long run, 10 or 15 years from now, I don't know. But what I do know is what I hope is that we sit down and talk about the fact that we cannot solve political disagreements through a gun.
Michael Yaki, really appreciate your contribution there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Anna.
One more reaction coming in. Let's bring you some of that now, including from the new Foreign Secretary, in fact, Yvette Cooper, who has had this to say: deeply shocked by the killing of Charlie Kirk in Utah. Political violence has no place in our societies. Our thoughts and condolences are with his family. Netanyahu as well, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli leader, has said Charlie Kirk was murdered for speaking truth and defending freedom. A lion-hearted friend of Israel, he fought the lies and stood tall for Judeo-Christian civilization. I spoke to him only 2 weeks ago and invited him to Israel. Sadly, that visit will not take place. We lost an incredible human being. His boundless pride in America and his valiant belief in free speech will leave a lasting impact. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. And Boris Johnson as well has spoken out, saying the murder of Charlie Kirk is a tragedy and a sign of the utter desperation and cowardice of those who could not defeat him in argument. Charlie Kirk has been killed not for espousing extremist views, because he didn't. He's been killed for saying things that used to be simple common sense. He has been killed because he had the courage to stand up publicly for reasonable opinions held by millions and millions of ordinary people, both in the US and Britain. The world has a shining new martyr to free speech. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and loved ones. Well, let's bring in our correspondent then, David Blevins, who has been following this. A new martyr to free speech then, David.
Yes, Anna, you've brought us some responses there from the United Kingdom in the last few minutes. I have a response from former President Barack Obama, who has said, "We don't yet know what motivated the person who shot and killed Charlie Kirk, but this kind of despicable violence has no place in our democracy. Michelle and I will be praying for Charlie's family tonight, especially his wife Erica and their 2 young children." We also have a response from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who says he is heartbroken and outraged by the assassination of Charlie Kirk. He was an incredible husband and father and a great American. May he rest in eternal peace with our Lord, posts Marco Rubio. And we also have got some details in relation to the flag on the White House, the stars and stripes having been lowered to half-mast or half-staff, as they say here in America. The White House sharing a proclamation from President Trump ordering that the flag be flown at half-staff until sunset on September 14th in honour of the memory of Charlie Kirk, someone who has been described by President Trump as legendary and certainly someone of enormous influence. We've been hearing from people at Turning Point, the organisation he founded and of which he was president. It is the fastest growing youth activist movement in the United States. That speaks for itself, and an organisation that promotes conservatism and Christianity among high school and college students. And of course, when you hear the term Christianity, for some people that is a reference to Christian faith, to others it is a reference to Christian nationalism. And whether the ideology is to the left or to the right, it is deeply ingrained in the United States. That is what has caused such polarisation and why we are seeing the kind of political violence that has erupted on the campus at Utah Valley University this afternoon, when a single shot during an event at which Charlie Kirk was speaking has claimed his life, and that will cause real concern at this moment of political jeopardy for a country that was already deeply divided and already paralysed to a large extent over the issue of gun violence.
Well, my last guest, I don't know if you heard him, Michael Yaki, suggested that possibly this could be the thing that prompts gun crime back to the top of the political agenda. But you mentioned Obama. Even Sandy Hook didn't do that. You know, he spelled that out as the greatest regret of his presidency, is what happened at Sandy Hook Elementary School. But in terms of Charlie Kirk and this potent political force he became, David, aged just 31, you know, driven by his podcast. I know NBC News figures suggest it was being downloaded between 500,000 and 750,000 times each day across social media. His following, 7.3 million followers on TikTok, 7 million on Instagram, 5 million on X, 3.5 million on YouTube. He definitely tapped in to something that America, young America, had been wanting to listen to.
Yes, Anna, and I would go as far as to say it wasn't just young America, but those with conservative leanings around the globe, because he had an enormous global following. In addition to that podcast and radio show, he authored a number of books, one of them simply entitled The Doctrine of MAGA. He was a person who rallied often to the cause of Donald Trump, appearing at rallies just after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump last year. He appeared at a rally urging people to come out and vote and ensure Donald Trump was returned to the White House, which he was in due course. He was a very good friend of people like Vice President J.D. Vance and Donald Trump's own son, Don Jr. So a person of enormous influence. It would be virtually impossible to exaggerate the influence that Charlie Kirk had, and that is why the impact of his death in these circumstances will be enormous across America and across the globe. It's not just a security issue tonight, although it is that at the university campus in Utah, because there is no suspect in custody. There is an enormous security operation underway there involving local law enforcement, the FBI, the National Guard, as they seek to track down who carried out this shooting. You can see the aftermath there from those aerial pictures. Charlie Kirk had been seated in that gazebo, engaging in debate or at least taking questions from members of the audience when a single shot rang out, claiming his life and prompting or sparking chaos on that campus as 2,000 to 3,000 people fled in fear. And that has now prompted this enormous security response, as you see on screen right now. And that will be the priority initially, the FBI supporting that investigation. But of course, the political questions, the political ramifications will continue for a very long time to come.
And David, we've seen the killings of politicians in this country, MPs. We've seen, or I mentioned earlier about this spike in political violence, including the killing of a Minnesota state lawmaker and her husband back in June. Are there demands for greater security for politicians in the United States? And will there be even more so after this incident?
There are questions every time it happens. There are assurances that security will be tightened, but it is very difficult, as you can see, at an open-air event to lock down a university campus, just like it was impossible for them to lock down the rally at Butler, Pennsylvania last July, when a person attempted to claim the life of the then Republican candidate, Donald Trump. Anna, I was in Minnesota in June following the death of that Minnesota senator and her husband, the attempted murders of other politicians on the same night. And then just 2 weeks ago, I was reporting the latest school shooting when two primary school-age children were shot dead, also in Minnesota. And every time it happens, people say this must be the thing that changes it. We heard from the mayor of the city where the latest school shooting took place about how thoughts and prayers didn't cut it any longer, that there needed to be some tangible action. And yet one has to wonder, what is it going to take? What is going to be the incident that perhaps prompts a serious debate about access to guns in this country, and prompts a change of heart that brings to an end the sort of political violence we're seeing on all too regular a basis now?
Yes, and we've just had those words, I think you referred to them, the proclamation by the President as a mark of respect for the memory of Charlie Kirk by the authority vested in me as President of the United States by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. I hereby order that the flag of the US shall be flown at half-staff at the White House and upon all public buildings and grounds, at all military posts and naval stations, and on all naval vessels of the federal government in the District of Columbia and throughout the United States and its territories and possessions until sunset September the 14th. I also direct that the flag shall be flown at half-staff for the same length of time at all United States embassies, consular offices and other facilities abroad, including all military facilities and naval vessels and stations. I mean, that really genuinely is a mark of the shock of the US president at the death of this man.
Yes, we are told the shock at the White House is palpable. Donald Trump knew Charlie Kirk personally and knew him well. He was a very good friend of Vice President J.D. Vance. Initially, when news of the shooting broke, they both issued statements calling people to pray for Charlie Kirk. So I think there is no doubt whatsoever that the administration will be rocked by this, as indeed US politics will be rocked by this. Charlie Kirk was very, very well known here, had an enormous profile because of his podcasting, the books he'd written, the fact he was the founder and president of the largest growing conservative activism organisation in the United States. And many people, I think, will pause and reflect on all of that and what it means for politics here. But of course, behind all of it, they will also be reflecting on the sheer human tragedy of this. A young woman tonight is a widow, and 2 young children have lost their father because of an act of what would appear to be political violence in the United States.
David, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's bring in now Radon Duchesne, who was in the front row of that event earlier today. Thank you for joining us. You must be certainly in a state of shock. Are you able to talk about what happened and the run-up to the shooting?
Yeah. I've already done a lot of interviews, so yeah. What do you want to know? Do you want me to start from the beginning?
Why don't I start with what has been said with the audience questions being put to Charlie Kirk at the time. He was speaking, obviously, at this debate hosted by his non-profit political organisation, Turning Point USA. And immediately before the shooting, Mr Kirk was taking questions from an audience member about mass shootings and gun violence. Do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years, said an audience member. Mr Kirk responded, too many. The questioner followed up, do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? And Mr Kirk asked, counting or not counting gang violence, and then a single shot rang out. Extraordinary to be on a debate about mass shooting when this happened. Is that your recollection of what happened?
That's exactly what happened. Yeah. And I was just, I was like I said, I was right up at the front and watching, and I heard the shot, and then I saw Charlie head go back, and then I just saw blood just pouring out. So I assumed they got his carotid artery, just by the amount of blood and that. And then I turned to look back because it sounded like the shot came from behind me and down into there. And then I just saw everybody starting to drop. So I dropped. I wasn't too worried because I didn't hear any more gunshots, but you never know. And then I just heard the crowd start yelling, run. And so we just all got up and left. So I didn't see them apprehend what they think is the alleged shooter. When I looked back up at the stage, when I got up, Charlie was already gone. So that's basically what I saw.
So you were right at the front, so you saw how serious it was. The crowd very quickly picked up on it. Was there a sense of panic? People talking about gasps and, after the shot rang out, some people thinking it was a firecracker. Was there a state of panic, or did people just literally try to flee?
Well, as I was telling my husband earlier, I think it was a different level all across. I think that there was some that were extremely panicked, and then there was some, I'm more of a calmer person, so I wasn't too worried since I didn't hear any more shots. Of course, I was concerned about Charlie. But when getting out to the cars, and it was a little bit of a trek to the cars, there was some people that were crying. There's just all levels of panic and non-panic.
Why had you gone to listen to him?
So I am more of a right-wing person. I do have some left views that I do follow and agree with. I watch a lot of him on YouTube, and I was just thinking, I wish he'd come to Utah. And the next thing I know, there was a Facebook ad saying he was coming to Utah. So I thought, well, I'll go because I like hearing the left side too, because I feel like I learn a lot more and it opens up my thought process a lot more. So I thought, well, I'll go. I probably will learn something, agree with some of the stuff Charlie says, some of the stuff he says I don't agree with. So it was just something for me to do, and just because I like him.
And, now your reaction, having been so close to, a shooting that has led to flags at half-mast, in American institutions across the world, what's your feeling now about what you've just witnessed and seen?
Well, what I'm kind of disgusted about is I posted on Facebook that I had seen that happen. Just a mass way for my family to know that I'm okay without having to call and text everybody individually. And seeing the amount of people that I have a lot of left friends, and I love my left friends just as much as I love my right-wing friends. But to watch them laugh at somebody, a father, a husband, get killed. That's probably the thing that's got me the most bent out of shape and upset, is seeing that it's celebrated, and it shouldn't be celebrated. We need to come together as a country and realize that there are different views, And I'm sure it's the same way there in London, well, in England, that you have your left and right wing people. We just need to come together and realize we all have different thoughts and views. And if we just come together, we might come up with a solution instead of combating each other.
Well, many people have, made or remarked that this really does show the polarization of politics in America. Does it feel like that for you, or does it feel like that after the reaction of people on Facebook?
Well, honestly, so I bought a Trump hat. I voted for Trump. Do I agree with everything he says? No, but majority of it I do like. And will I wear that hat in public? No, because it's not safe. The left seems to be definitely more of the violent ones. And I'm not talking about like the LGBTQ. I'm aligned with them for the most part. Just the whole like violent, you better, think how I think, or I'm going to call you names. I might hurt you. I just think it's not called for.
And here we are, gun crime again, yet another individual taken, by the act of a shooter. Will this ever be on the agenda, do you think, for America to take action on the number of arms that are held by people?
Well, so I am pro Second Amendment. I grew up with guns. We knew we did not touch the guns, or we would have to deal with my dad. And my dad wasn't the nicest if we did things that we weren't supposed to do. I think that there needs to be a lot more maybe education. I don't think taking guns away from citizens is the answer, because if we do, the only people that are going to have them are criminals. And so I think that there just needs to be some responsibility. Gun owners just need to be responsible. I don't think that we need to take them away.
Can I just ask you about the event itself and security there? Certainly the former Utah Congressman, Jason Chaffetz, a Republican who was at the event, suggested there was a light police presence and Charlie Kirk had some security of his own, but not enough. Did you see any security, or was it just impossible, do you think, to protect and ring-fence an event held outside like this?
There wasn't security checkpoints. When I saw that they were coming, I went onto the site, got my ticket, and so I had it on my phone ready to show. And when I showed up, there was nobody looking at tickets. So there was no like any type of security. They weren't checking bags. They weren't putting you through metal detectors. There was some cops, some police officers. I don't know how many. Because I was clear up at the front. I did see 3 or 4 right near where he was, and a few above. There was a walkway above. And then I saw a few out in the back when I turned around. And then he had some security, and I don't know if the campus has some security either. So yeah, I see where you guys were just showing the event, and I was right up against those little gates there. But yeah, there just wasn't any security really. And that kind of had me nervous when I was there. I was thinking, what's going to prevent anybody that wants to try to do something from happening? And the next thing you know, it happens.
Goodness me. Raiden Duchesne, right at the front row of those pictures we're showing there, listening and watching Charlie Kirk, and watched how he was shot, how he fell. We really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, has put this out on X. My thoughts this evening are with the loved ones of Charlie Kirk. It is heartbreaking that a young family has been robbed of a father and a husband. We must all be free to debate openly and freely without fear. There can be no justification for political violence. But let's bring in our correspondent, David Blevins. And political violence this was, which causes a great deal of concern and fear for people there in the States. David.
Yes, the United States has been for quite some time a deeply polarised place, and a place where they continue to debate, as you've just heard, their Second Amendment rights, their right to bear arms, the whole debate around who should have access to guns and who shouldn't. But against that backdrop, America is this evening coming to terms with an immense tragedy. The Stars and Stripes, the American flag, having been lowered to half staff on the White House at the direction of the President. It will remain there until September 14th as tribute to Charlie Kirk, a man who President Trump has described as legendary. Donald Trump said Charlie Kirk understood and had the heart of American young people more than anyone else. And that is a reference to his enormous influence.
David Blevins, thank you very much indeed. So you join us on the day that an icon of the political right, Charlie Kirk, has been shot dead on a university campus in Utah. The US president, who was a supporter and had appeared at events with him, has ordered the US flag to fly at half-mast or half-staff at institutions across America, including here, these pictures at the White House in Washington. Videos posted to social media from Utah Valley University show Mr Kirk speaking into a handheld microphone while sitting under a white gazebo emblazoned with the slogans, "The American Comeback" and "Prove Me Wrong." It is 11 o'clock. You join us here on Sky News with our top story, the breaking news that tonight from the US, Charlie Kirk, a leading conservative activist and prominent supporter of President Donald Trump, is dead after being shot at a college event in Utah. Well, heavily armed SWAT teams are at the scene tonight searching for the suspect who is yet to be apprehended on the campus. And in Washington tonight, the flag at the White House flying at half-mast as President Trump paid tribute to Charlie Kirk, saying he was loved and admired by all. So tonight's breaking news then from the United States. The right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk has died after being shot while he was speaking at an event in Utah. The 31-year-old, who was the CEO and co-founder of the conservative youth organisation Turning Point USA, was addressing students at Utah University when he was shot in the neck. He was rushed to hospital, taken into surgery, but his death was confirmed by the president himself. Donald Trump wrote in a post on Truth Social, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you." Well, let us show you the live shot then of the flag of the Stars and Stripes now flying at half-mast over the White House as ordered by President Trump. He said in a proclamation in the last few minutes, "As a mark of respect for the memory of Charlie Kirk by the authority vested in me as President of the United States by the Constitution and the laws of the US, I hereby order that the flag of the United States shall be flown at half-mast at the White House and upon all public buildings and grounds, at all military posts and naval stations, and on all naval vessels of the federal government in the District of Columbia and throughout the United States and its territories and possessions until sunset on September the 14th, 2025. I also direct that the flag shall be flown at half-staff for the same length of time at all US embassies, consular offices and other facilities abroad, including all military facilities and naval vessels and stations." Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins, and real shock that this young man, just 31 years old, with an enormous influence across the states, has been taken so young.
Yes, Anna, he was on the first stop of what he called the American Comeback Tour. Charlie Kirk addressing 2,000 to 3,000 people at the Utah Valley University when a single shot rang out. Videos circulating online show him being wounded in the neck. He slumps from the chair, and the shooting sparks absolute chaos and pandemonium on campus as people flee for their very lives. Initially, we were told that a suspect had been taken into custody. We now understand that is no longer the case, and there is a full-scale manhunt underway involving the FBI and the various law enforcement agencies. But beyond all of the security questions, this is at its heart a human tragedy. A 31-year-old father of two young children aged 3 and 1 has been shot dead in what would appear to be an act of political violence. We are told by eyewitnesses at the scene he was speaking about gun violence, answering questions from the audience just moments before the fatal shot was fired. There is palpable shock, we are told, at the White House. President Trump knew Charlie Kirk very well. He was a close friend of the Vice President J.D. Vance and other members of the administration, and lots of questions will be asked about security, but lots of questions are again being asked about just how deeply polarised America is in its politics and whether or not there will ever be any solution to the concerns that are raised frequently in relation to gun violence, because someone bearing a gun today has claimed the life of a very influential American, Charlie Kirk, really, as President Trump puts it, being someone who understood the heart of conservatives, and particularly conservative young people in the United States.
David, let's get some political reaction now and listen to the New York Democrat, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Whether a person is going to kill someone else with a gun or not. There are so many other indicators, and I think it is so deeply important that when a politician tries to blame words for inaction, they need to look at their action and their record. Enough of this. This is horrific. This is awful. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk risks an uncorking of political chaos and violence that we cannot risk in America. We cannot risk it.
Congressman, given the political condition, are you worried about holding the convention?
I think that, of course, it's a natural consequence to see this and to be worried about this. And I think, but what is most important is the fact that we've gotten to this place, and we need to figure out what we can do to ensure that every American can feel safe going to a public event. Thank you.
So the politician known as AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, explaining that this obviously promotes fear in all politicians in America and that action is needed. Let's bring in now Republican strategist Amy Tarkanian. Amy, no doubt real shock amongst those on the right, supporters of Charlie Kirk, those who support Donald Trump about this incident.
Sure, and it's not just shock on the right. I think it's shock across party lines. I have a number of friends who have already started posting their shock and condolences. Whether if you agreed with him or not is besides the point. We are at a point in our nation where we have not just gun violence, but violence in general is just overwhelming, and it needs to be addressed. And I'm not exactly sure where to even begin. We do need to address mental health. We do need to address prison recidivism. We do need to address laws that maybe aren't being enforced. We do need to address maybe some more of the lenient sentences that are coming out of some of these courtrooms. We also had a young woman on public transportation just within the last few days that was brutally murdered as well, but it was with a knife. And so we cannot make this our new normal. And it seems to be just that, which is clearly upsetting. Right now, I'm just receiving a multitude of text messages of people in disbelief, people crying, people confused. You're speaking about the fact that Charlie Kirk was basically a voice for the youth, for the younger generation in the Republican Party. And that is the case. He was well known for wanting to have debate, wanting to try to answer questions and then answer them with his point of view.
Do you mind just holding on for a second? Marjorie Taylor Greene is just speaking.
Turning Point USA family, and it's the worst thing. Shocking, and everyone's really devastated. My children are devastated. Just everyone I've known. There really aren't words.
Can you speak to his importance to the conservative movement, to your own political rise?
I really think what was great about Charlie Kirk, and I was just telling Tia this, is he would go on college campuses and tell young people to get married and have children, and just talk about how wonderful it is to be married and have children. He shared the Word of God. He was a Christian, and he shared the gospel of Jesus Christ, and he encouraged young people. And he also would have debates on ideas on college campuses, which, I mean, that's our First Amendment, and college campuses have always been a place for that. And I believe today he was killed for the words that he says and the things that he stood for. And we're honestly shocked. We're devastated, shocked, and angry. And those are just natural feelings.
How close were you to him?
Charlie Kirk was a friend. He was a good friend. I spoke at many of his events over the years, knew him when he was a lot younger. And, I mean, he's not much older than my oldest daughter. But I just think it's really, honestly, horrific.
What kind of legacy does he leave behind to the conservative movement?
Charlie Kirk leaves a huge legacy. It's going to be hard for anybody to fill his shoes. He was extremely important. Students all over the country would get very excited if they found out he was coming to their college campus. He brought in thousands of people to hear him speak. Even people that didn't agree with him would come, ask questions, even argue with him. He was always about the debate, and Charlie Kirk was never for violence. And to see him murdered in such a graphic way in front of the camera, and that video is too gruesome. Honestly, I hope it gets taken down. I don't think his wife or children one day should ever see it. I really hope it gets taken down. But I'm at a loss for words, and I'm not often at a loss for words.
How concerned are you about your own safety in the wake of this attack? I mean, he's a giant on the right. You were a giant on the right. Yeah,
he had asked me that too. Of course, I am very concerned. I have some of the most death threats in Congress, and they're always ongoing. But again, today it's not about me. Today it's about Charlie and his wife and his family and everyone that's mourning his loss. So, thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene talking there about her good friend, Charlie Kirk. It is shocking. It is really devastating. It is horrific. Asking for the video of the shooting incident to be taken down. His huge legacy, killed for the words he said and what he stood for, is what she has just said. Just to warn you, we are expecting to hear from Spencer Cox, who is the Republican governor of Utah, who is going to speak shortly. We understand the stage certainly set for that. But in the meantime, let's bring back in Amy Tarkanian. And we heard there from Marjorie Taylor Greene the shock that you've already expressed to us, also suggesting that she has death threats herself. This is of real concern to those in the political sphere.
It absolutely is. And my husband is a county commissioner, and he's also running for the Nevada Attorney General position. And we have been involved in politics for several decades, and we've come across some pretty sketchy people and some pretty scary scenarios. You have stalkers, you have people with cameras in your face, you have people who forget that you're actually human and don't think twice about verbally abusing or throwing items at you if they disagree with something that you may believe in or some way that you took a vote. I would be extremely concerned if I were, some of these more well-known politicians. I mean, we've seen this happen now on several occasions. You had you had Congressman Steve Scalise. You've had also Gabby Giffords. You've had a number of politicians that have been attacked ruthlessly. And so, we can talk about having higher security at every single event, but that doesn't seem to slow anyone down. Supposedly, we had high security with the assassination attempt for President Trump. And look what happened there, and so it's just like I mentioned earlier, it's becoming overwhelming because also, too, what happened within the same hour of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, there was a high school shooting in the state of Colorado. So this is just, you almost feel numb. It's gut-wrenching.
And tell us a bit about his politics, who was attracted to it, why the Trump family is so devastated. Looking at it almost a form of Christian nationalism. But put it in your own words.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, you could either agree or disagree with him, but he did stand pretty firm on his principles that he believed in. And so those would probably be viewed more, as you mentioned, Christian nationalists, more to the right. And that's fine. You can even be somebody who is far progressive and you still have the First Amendment right to speak freely. And it's devastating to see that somebody has been taken out for their belief system. And the fact also, too, it was kind of weird. We thought, wow, this happened in the state of Utah. It happened in a city where it's predominantly, Latter-day Saint or Mormons, people who are believers of Jesus Christ. And so it's going to be interesting when they actually catch this individual, God willing, and see what his motive actually was. If it wasn't political, I doubt it. It had to have been political.
And in terms of his legacy, we heard Marjorie Taylor Greene suggesting that he would leave a huge legacy at the tender age of just 31. But what will the legacy be of this incident, do you think?
Well, the president has already asked that every flag be at half staff, including the embassies. I think the more that there's violence ensued upon the Republicans that are trying to pursue their agenda, I think you turn them slightly more into martyrs. And so he is going to be looked at historically as somebody who was able to rally the younger generation. And that's always been a little bit of a more difficult situation for the Republican Party. That's why they like to stereotype us as the party of old white dudes. But that's no longer the case. And I think he has a big part in that, in rallying the younger vote.
Amy, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Let's get more reaction then from Washington.
That's something concrete that we can do to try to turn this nightmare around. Obviously, I don't want people engaged in political violence of any kind, whether it's with guns or knives or fists. The whole point of having a social contract is that we resolve our conflicts non-violently through the political process.
Some Republican members of Congress have blamed Democrats at this point and the rhetoric from the left as a result for this shooting. I mean, do you think that rings true at all?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen any reports about who the shooter was or who the killer was, and I think it doesn't help a very difficult situation for people to be blaming violence like this on political parties or political factions. I certainly resisted that when I heard people doing that after the Minnesota killings or after Paul Pelosi was attacked. And, there's no reason for us to get into that. The violence against political leaders is unacceptable in a free democratic society, and it is a threat to democracy. So we all have to denounce it. We all have to reject it. And we should all resist the temptation just to point fingers. That takes us nowhere. We should be rejecting gun violence and political violence in all of their forms, regardless of who the target is.
As far as the political rhetoric goes, though, do you believe that lawmakers on both sides need to tone this down?
Sure, I definitely believe lawmakers need to tone it down, and you know, we should do our best to try to make friends with people on the other side of the aisle. I mean, we're all Americans, right? So I just don't accept the idea that to belong to a different political party means that you're in some kind of enemy camp. And we all have to reject that and struggle against it.
How do you struggle and reject that? I mean, it seems like so much of this comes from a cultural animus that's almost bottom up in a sense. Can you really display a top-down sense of an example to follow that you think will be effective?
Well, I think no, but we can display bottom up forms of friendship and relationship. And I hope we all can do it. I mean, obviously, in the House of Representatives, we got 435 people. You can't make close friends with everybody, but everybody can try to make friends with some people who are outside of their immediate, you know, state or political group. You know, I certainly try and do that, and I hope we all will try and do that. But it's a very dark time with the political violence spiraling out of control and gun violence a threat to everybody in the country.
You and other members of the former January 6th committee had stepped up security in the days after that committee. Are you worried for your own safety and the safety of your colleagues?
I mean, I'm worried for the country that we're in this state. We've got to step away from violence as a way of people expressing political differences or even, you know, passionate feelings about things. We can model for our kids that we know how to use words, we know how to use language, we know how to have conversations. But the idea that people use violence as an instrument of their emotion is just intolerable. The whole reason we have a social contract is to make ourselves safer. And that means that we resolve conflicts within American society nonviolently. And that's something that every political leader and public official today should be speaking up for. And we should be modeling as much as possible civil dialogue, even when we have very strong disagreements about stuff. We've got to model civil disagreement. And then, you know, I feel very strongly about gun violence and the unique situation the United States of America is in. And I've been very willing to talk to colleagues across the political spectrum and across the aisle about why I think we need to act. We have more than 90% of American people who support a universal violent criminal background check on all gun purchases. You know, commanding majorities support bans on assault weapons, so we don't, you know, see, you know, future horrors like we did in Newtown or in Parkland, Florida. So, you know, some people say it's impolite or impolitic to talk about policy solutions on a day when people are shot. Unfortunately, people are shot every single day in the United States of America. So how are we ever going to get out of this nightmare if we don't have an honest accounting of what's taking place in our own society?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, getting more reaction then from Washington. That was the Maryland Democrat Jamie Raskin. We need to reject political violence and gun violence, he said. He was the man who famously took Nigel Farage to task about free speech, outlaying the hypocrisy of free speech under the Trump administration. And in fact, Nigel Farage was one of the first to make a comment about the death of Charlie Kirk tonight. This is a very dark day for American democracy. I'm desperately sad for Charlie, his wife and children. The comments of Mr Farage a little earlier. Well, let's talk now to the chair of Republican Overseas, Greg Swenson. You know, your reaction to this, it's quite an extraordinary event with, you know, big repercussions, certainly.
Yeah, it really is. It's absolutely devastating. And you know, of course, it's difficult for us on the political right in the United States and our expat community in the UK. Really devastating. But of course, you know, we just feel, especially for Charlie's wife and two young children. I mean, it's just absolutely horrible to think about.
And we heard earlier from Marjorie Taylor Greene suggesting that he'd been killed for the words he said and what he stood for. Do you share that view?
Yeah, unless it was just a wild, random, coincidence, but I doubt it. I think she's got a good point, and I can't disagree with AOC who made some points. And this is a time where, maybe it reminds me of 14 months ago. We spent a lot of time analyzing and opining on the assassination attempt on President Trump, and everybody sort of agreed briefly to lay their arms down and kiss and make up and not be so aggressive politically with the rhetoric. And it picked up 3 or 4 days later. I mean, it didn't last very long. So maybe this will be different this time. But I do hope that both we can all dial it down a bit.
Well, I'm just reading, actually, from the Reuters news agency, according to the FBI director, the subject of the horrific shooting, as they put it today, that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. And clearly, motivation, as you suggested, will be really critical to finding out what happened here. But in the meantime, of course, that awful video, Charlie Kirk sitting underneath that gazebo, with the words emblazoned on there, the American comeback, behind him, prove me wrong, this famous debater on college campuses, shot in the neck, blood gushing from his neck. Awful video, certainly. He was taken to hospital, but clearly his life could not be saved. A truly awful thing to witness for those in the crowd. Yet another political shooting in America. More deaths, more violence. What can be done about this? Is it simply a case of toning down the rhetoric, or is it partly about what some people view as the extremity of American policies now under the Trump administration?
Well, no, I think it's very much a return to common sense. So I think maybe some people are upset with that, that are, advocating for these 80-20 issues. But I think that, the majority of the president's actions have been very welcome. And just look at the violence in our big cities in America, where the president has actually decided to do his best to stop the violence, stop the crime. So, no, I don't think it's anything about the Trump policies or the president's policies. I think it's just, a number of things. It's hard to pinpoint one thing. I think there's a mental health crisis, that's for sure. If you look at it's correlated when you look at the number of mental health issues or when you see the numbers on mental health, totally correlated with mass shootings and school shootings. And then we just go back again to the big city crime violence. That's been around, we've in Chicago, where I have a home, we've lost 40,000, mostly young men, since 1960. 40,000. I mean, your probability of dying in Chicago, if you were an 18 to 25-year-old male, is higher than it was for American soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, we do have some crime issues, and I think a great example of that was the poor Ukrainian refugee who died in Charlotte the other day, a victim of knife crime by a felon who had 14 priors and was out on virtually no bail. He was basically released without cash bail, and committed a violent crime and killed this poor young woman. And so, yeah, we have some issues to address. And I don't, unlike Jamie Raskin, the Democrats seem to always blame it on gun control. We don't have a gun problem. We have a violent crime problem in America. And so, homicides are up 7% since 2019. 92% of violent crime in America has nothing to do with guns. And even in cities where guns are illegal, gunfire and gun violence is rampant. So, and we've had a 50% drop in arrests since 2019. So,
Greg, I'm going to interrupt you if you don't mind. Greg Swenson there, thank you very much indeed. Let's listen then to Spencer Cox, Republican governor of Utah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bo Mason, Commissioner for the Utah Department of Public Safety. Today at approximately 12:20 Mountain Standard Time, political influencer Charlie Kirk was shot in an event at the Utah Valley University. He was taken by private vehicle to Timpanogos Hospital, where he later passed. The Utah Department of Public Safety will be co-leading this criminal investigation to find this killer, along with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are working in unison with the County Sheriff's Office, the local police department, and the University Police Department. all of which have been very cooperative and fully engaged in this process. Shortly after the shooting, we did have a suspect in custody, George Zinn, but he was released from custody after we identified that he did not match the shooting suspect and was not an accurate person of interest. However, he has been booked into the county jail by Utah Valley University Police Department for obstruction of justice. We do still have an active investigation for the person of interest. This incident occurred with a large crowd around. There was one shot fired and one victim. While the suspect is at large, we believe this was a targeted attack towards one individual. This is a tragic moment in our state and in our country. As we encourage everyone who is struggling with news of the incident to call 988, our state mental health crisis line. In addition to that, our partners with the FBI will also be discussing other ways we can communicate through the public for tips and other information. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the FBI, we extend our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of Charlie Kirk. Our thoughts are also with the people who witnessed this traumatic event. We know that what you experienced was very difficult. Our thoughts are with you as well. As soon as we heard about the shooting, special agents and personnel from the Salt Lake field office responded immediately. We have full resources devoted to this investigation, including tactical, operational, investigative, and intelligence. To be clear, the FBI will fully support and co-lead this investigation alongside with our partners. We are working on setting up a digital media tip line, and as soon as it's established, we'll get that information out to everyone. I know there's a lot of questions. This is very much an active case, and this investigation is in its early stages. We are following all the leads and all the evidence. If anyone has any information, please report it to the FBI or local law enforcement. Thank you.
On behalf of President Tumenez, who we've been communicating with, and she's on her way back right now, I say that on behalf of Utah Valley University, we are shocked and saddened by the tragic passing of Charlie Kirk. We express our sincere condolences to the Kirk family. We grieve with our students, faculty, and staff who bore witness to this unspeakable tragedy. He was invited by the student group Turning Point USA to speak on our campus. We firmly believe that UVU is a place to share ideas and to debate openly and respectfully. Any attempt to infringe on those rights has no place here. We do not condone any form of violence at UVU and seek to make our campus a safe place for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this dark and tragic occasion. I want to thank our law enforcement officers who are leading this investigation, starting with Chief Long and his response here with the UVU Police Department. We're grateful for your leadership and your team. And again, to the speakers that you've just heard from who are co-leading this investigation. I also want to recognize Sheriff Mike Smith, who has been an invaluable partner as this investigation moves forward. I've been in touch with President Trump, with FBI Director Kash Patel. We are completely aligned with our state and federal partners as we work through this case. Now, this is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. We are celebrating 250 years of the founding of this great nation. That founding document, the Declaration of Independence, that this great experiment on which we embarked together 250 years ago, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. The first one of those is life. And today, a life was taken. Charlie Kirk was first and foremost husband and a dad to 2 young children. He was also very much politically involved, and that's why he was here on campus. Charlie believed in the power of free speech and debate to shape ideas and to persuade people. Historically, our university campuses in this nation and here in the state of Utah have been the place where truth and ideas are formulated and debated. And that's what he does. He comes on college campuses and he debates. That is foundational to the formation of our country, to our most basic constitutional rights. And when someone takes the life of a person because of their ideas or their ideals, then that very constitutional foundation is threatened. Now, we have a person of interest in custody. The investigation is ongoing. But I want to make it crystal clear right now, to whoever did this, we will find you. We will try you. And we will hold you accountable to the furthest extent of the law. And I just want to remind people that we still have the death penalty here in the state of Utah. Our nation is broken. We've had political assassinations recently in Minnesota. We had an attempted assassination on the governor of Pennsylvania. And we had an attempted assassination on a presidential candidate and former president of the United States, and now current president of the United States. Nothing I say can unite us as a country. Nothing I can say right now can fix what is broken. Nothing I can say can bring back Charlie Kirk. Our hearts are broken. We mourn with his wife, his children, his family, his friends. We mourn as a nation. If anyone in the sound of my voice celebrated even a little bit at the news of this shooting, I would beg you to look in the mirror and to see if you can find a better angel in there somewhere. I don't care what his politics are. I care that he was an American. We desperately need our country. We desperately need leaders in our country. But more than the leaders, we just need every single person in this country to think about where we are and where we want to be. To ask ourselves, is this it? Is this what 250 years has wrought on us? I pray that that's not the case. I pray that those who hated what Charlie Kirk stood for will put down their social media and their pens and pray for his family, and that all of us will try to find a way to stop hating our fellow Americans. With that, we're happy to take a few questions.
The FBI director is posting that a suspect is in custody. I would just like clarification. Do you or do you not have a suspected shooter in custody?
We have a person of interest in custody that is being interviewed right now.
That is not George Zinn.
That is not George Zinn. That is correct.
Is there any indication for
looking for another shooter or anybody else related to this?
Yes, we are actively looking for anyone and everyone who has any possible information relating to this shooting.
Can you tell us details about the suspect being taken into custody? Where? How long ago?
We cannot at this point, but we will get you that information when we can.
Is there believed to be a second individual involved in the shooting?
At this point, there is no information that would lead us to believe that there is a second person involved.
Can you guys talk about the possible shooter?
Do you want to talk about what we know there?
Yeah. The only information we have on the suspect, the possible shooter, is taken from closed circuit TV here on campus. We do have that. We're analyzing it, but it is security camera footage, so you can kind of guess what the quality of that is. But we do know dressed in all dark clothing, but we don't have a much better description other than that.
Where do you think the shot came from?
The shot came from here on campus, from a location at a third, potentially from a roof. Yes, a longer distance shot from a roof.
So to clarify, with the security camera footage you have and the person of interest that's in custody, does that match up?
That's what we're trying to decipher right now.
So did FBI or DHS have anything on the threat board this morning?
I can't speak.
I'll just say that the investigation's ongoing, and as soon as we have further information, we will be sure to release it.
Any indications of foreign intelligence involvement?
As of now, I can't comment on any of that.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the security of the event itself? Who was there security-wise, and what happens on these kind of events?
Chief Long.
So my name is Jeff Long. I'm the police chief here at UVU, and I'll tell you right now, we are devastated. We're a small police department. We have a very large campus. We have over 40,000 students, and we love our students. We love our visitors, and we're devastated by what happened today. This is the police chief's nightmare. I'm very saddened for the Kirk family. I know his wife and parents found out about this. You know, obviously he's away from home. He's here in Utah. They find out by a police officer that visits their home. That's tragic. Nobody wants that. But I can tell you about our venue today. This was an open venue. This was outside. We did have 6 officers working that event. We had probably over 3,000 people that were in attendance. It sat down in kind of a bowl area here on the central campus. We have a waterfall area. And so he was kind of in a lower area, surrounded by buildings. We had some plainclothes police officers that were in the crowd as well. We train for these things, and you think you have things covered, and these things, unfortunately, they happen. You try to get your bases covered, and unfortunately today we didn't. And because of that, we had this tragic incident. So we did have officers there. We had Charlie Kirk's team. He has a security team that travels with him, and they were here with him when he was shot.
Was the gun recovered?
I'm sorry, see?
Was the weapon recovered?
At this point, I can't disclose that.
When Charlie Kirk was shot, there was a question being asked about mass shootings. Was that person apprehended, and do you know who asked that question?
Say the question again. I don't know if I understand what you're saying.
When Charlie Kirk was shot, he was answering a question about mass shootings specifically. Was that person apprehended, and do you know who asked that question?
I do not. We do not have that at this moment.
What kind of weapon was used?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for just one more question, so thank you.
Yeah, a question for the chief as well. Was it your team or Kirk's team, or a combination of both, that kind of set the security protocol for the event?
So we work together. He has his team, and they do this all over the country. We all know that. This is not uncommon for them. They're very comfortable on campuses, and I was coordinating with his lead security guy, and so yeah, we were working together.
Was this a sharpshooter type shot?
Ladies and gentlemen, those are all the questions that will be answered today. Again, thank you for covering this. We will be updating you as soon as we have additional information through normal channels, working with law enforcement. Again, our deepest condolences to the Kirk family and to the students who were there today. I would just ask everyone everywhere to please pray for their family and to pray for our country. We need it now more than ever. Thank you.
So 1 shot, 1 victim, a targeted attack. And as we heard there from the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, this is a political assassination. The suggestion that the shot could have come from a roof on campus. Well, let's bring in our US correspondent David Blevins amidst confusion about who is in custody after what the FBI director, Kash Patel, had said, David.
Yes, shortly before this press conference took place, Kash Patel posted that a suspect was in custody. Then we heard from Bo Mason, who is from Utah Public Safety, that a suspect is at large. There was immediate confusion, but I think some clarity has been brought to it by the governor, Spencer Cox, telling us that there is a person of interest in custody. So for whatever legal reason, they're choosing not to use the term suspect, describing the person who has been detained as a person of interest. They also confirmed that they do not believe there was any more than one person involved in the shooting. Some interesting facts did emerge, though, in the course of the last few minutes, them telling us that there are 40,000 students at this campus. We're told by eyewitnesses around 2,000 to 3,000 people were in attendance at the event where Charlie Kirk was speaking before he was fatally wounded. And we've just heard from the campus police that there were 6 officers policing that. So that does speak to the challenges of policing an event on this scale, especially outdoors. And there will be many questions, I think, in the days to come about that. But Anna, I think you would probably agree the most poignant words came from Governor Spencer Cox towards those who he said may be celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. He urged them to look in the mirror. And he said, I don't care what his politics were, because he was an American. And he is encouraging people across this nation to pause for a moment and reflect on just how politically divided the United States of America is right now. One thing perhaps that will bring some comfort is that within the last hour we have had bipartisan condemnation of this political violence from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a face of the right in many ways, a deeply conservative Republican, right across to former President Joe Biden, who has called for an end to political violence and sent his thoughts and prayers to the wife and 2 young children of Charlie Kirk.
David Blevins, thank you. And as you were talking, we were looking at the stars and stripes of the US flag at half-mast or half-staff, as they say in the States, flying there above the White House at the order of the US president. The White House, all public buildings, military institutions, in fact, in America and territories across the globe, a real mark of the respect that Donald Trump felt towards Charlie Kirk, who has been killed today. Well, a little late, let's just bring in who were supposed to be our paper reviewers tonight, Adam Bolton and Kevin Maguire. Good to see you here, and apologies that you didn't get on. We've seen how seriously this has been taken in America, the influence that somebody like Charlie Kirk has had on the discourse of American politics, especially on the right and on the Christian right as well.
He was a very polarising figure, and he also opposed gun control. And guns is a serious problem. Until America disarms Americans, people are going to be shot at incredible rates. It's a real personal tragedy. It's a political moment too, but he was polarising because he was very, very much on the right. He was a hard right. He was a champion, a cheerleader of Donald Trump. He had very controversial views on women. For instance, Taylor Swift, getting married, said she should submit to her husband. He's proposed the US military to be put into cities, which is hugely controversial in the United States. But we don't know who yet has shot him, but we must remember that when Donald Trump does the attempted assassination and he shot his ear, it was a Republican who had the rifle.
I mean, a lot of people, I think, outside the United States may be puzzled by this because I don't think that Charlie Kirk was a man really particularly widely known in this country. Clearly very influential in the United States because he was an influencer. He's someone who since the age of 18, I think he's now 31, had been organising in schools going round and universities going round, advocating, basically support for MAGA and MAGA values. And that explains why, really quite extraordinary tonight, the person who confirmed and announced to the world that he had died after being shot in the neck was the President of the United States. It just shows how tight this is. And, for all the tragedy of this and the sincerity, which I'm sure we've just heard in that news conference and elsewhere, we have to remember that when, for example, a Democratic Congresswoman from Minnesota was murdered a few weeks ago, when Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked, we did not get this sort of response from MAGA to that type of use of violence.
Yeah, but violence is wrong. Political violence is wrong.
Absolutely.
Condemn it left, right, centre, wherever it comes from. But you're quite right. The right did not respond towards the Democrats the way the Democrats have responded on this occasion.
Yeah, but it makes you feel that the top of the MAGA tree, if you like, is quite a closed shop and quite a small community of people. We know Charlie Kirk has spent a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago, for example.
Yeah.
He'd done the get out the vote before 2024. He'd supported him back in 2016. He'd spoken about the conspiracy theories around January the 6th and the 2020 election. You know, and he'd worked for Donald Trump Jr. He'd been amongst the Trump clan.
Yeah.
And that's why they're taking it so very personally.
And that's why flags are flying at half-mast, because he was close to Trump himself rather than a great, revered national figure.
I mean, he spoke at Trump rallies. I can remember seeing him being part of the warm-up act at Trump rallies. And of course, you know, one of the things we have to remember about all this is politics is money in America, and he's a rich, or was a rich man. He made a lot of money from it.
Yeah, he got financed and then monetised himself, yeah.
And in terms of British newspapers, an incident that came late, his death confirmed quite late into the evening, but certainly The Eye has responded you know, very swiftly with a full page on this. US conservative influencer Charlie Kirk dies after being shot at Utah University event. And, you know, there is the gazebo he used. Prove me wrong, the American comeback. He was known as an arch debater, suggesting nobody could beat him, and going into these liberal university campuses to take his form of American...
Not sure they're liberal in Utah, I have to say. But, I mean, a remarkable piece of journalism by The Eye. I mean, frankly, this front page, which says Trump ally Charlie Kirk shot dead at student rally, I mean, that front page was, you know, emailed over to Sky literally within minutes of Donald Trump making his announcement. And then on top of that, this is a pretty comprehensive article that they produced in The Eye. US conservative influencer Charlie Kirk dies after being shot at Utah University event. So, you know, really... I think they work well. Other papers will be... changing their pages, certainly inside some on the front, because, and the Eye point out, he was very vocal on culture wars. There was there's a lot of poison in US politics, and some of it was dripped and poured by Charlie Kirk. We mourn his murder, his assassination, and political violence has to be condemned. But not everybody in America saw him as a great heroic figure.
Yes, conspiracy theories indeed on, I mentioned the 2020 election, on climate change, and indeed on COVID-19 as part of his massive empire on social media with millions of followers. So, you know, a great influence, and actually listened to, as I spoke to one person tonight, by those on the left of politics too, to get a full range of views, as some people do. But in terms of, you know, what happens now, you know, there's no way that, you know, amendments on free speech or gun ownership will be changed because of this, because nothing has changed the dial, has it? Certainly on gun ownership. Sandy Hook, I mentioned, and Obama's spoken out tonight against political violence, but Sandy Hook on an elementary school changed nothing.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting. When he was shot, he was having an exchange with a member of the audience, and we heard someone saying how they'd been detained. The member of the audience asked him how many trans people had been involved in school shootings, and he said, "Oh, I don't know, too many." And she said, "It's 5." This person questioning, I don't know whether man or woman, and it's 5. And then she said, "Well, do you know how many of these mass shootings there'd been?" And at that point, he was shot. And the answer to that was 5,700. So the point being that he had been pointing the finger at trans people, whereas in fact...
Now, that is a remarkable coincidence. Or there was a conspiracy. Now, which I normally think these things tend to be coincidences, but nevertheless, for the shooter, we heard at some distance, to have pulled the trigger then and taken his life is just wow. I mean, that's...
And hence the question, have you apprehended the person
Yeah.
who asked those series of questions to him at that moment? You know, it's been fascinating to see the British reaction from right across the political spectrum here. Nigel Farage, obviously, Kemi Badenoch, Boris Johnson very swiftly out, but also Keir Starmer.
Yvette Cooper as well.
Yes, who?
Yvette Cooper.
Yeah, Yvette Cooper, yes, the new Foreign Secretary, indeed. So, you know, all lamenting political violence. You know, those on the right, Boris Johnson, for example, saying there's another martyr to free speech as part of his attitude to it. But, you know, is there a fear that we've seen deaths of MPs in this country, that really it is getting more dangerous for politicians both here and stateside?
Yeah, it's been dangerous here before because, of course, during the
IRA
Troubles, or you know, I think 4 MPs were killed, possibly more, and it had happened in the past. But there's no Joe Cox in 2016, and David Amos, and lots of other attacks. And you speak to MPs, and the abuse and threats they get is mounted. A lot of it on social media. A lot of it on social media, so-called influencers and people just think they have a license to be abusive. But no, all politicians, in fact, every citizen, everybody who believes in a democracy, has a common interest in opposing political violence.
And I think, you know, there's been a more comprehensive reaction to political violence in America from our politicians across the spectrum than perhaps there has been on occasions in the United States. And of course, we have to see all this in the context of Donald Trump coming on his state visit to this country next week, and clearly no desire at all to say anything which he could possibly take offence at.
And that visit itself, truncated, we learnt today, 2 days now, it appears. The first day entirely behind closed doors at Windsor Castle. So there is a management of that visit already underway, you know, notwithstanding the difficulties currently faced by the UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson. But anyway, that aside, it does feel like they are managing the visit very carefully.
I think it'll be a relief to the Prime Minister that he doesn't have him longer than he needs, because, of course, it got the UK, got the Prime Minister out of a hole when he went to the Oval Office to give him that unprecedented second state visit. But politically, Trump is so unpopular in the UK, Starmer will be damaged by it.
I suspect even before the Mandelson matter came to a head, I suspect they weren't too enthusiastic about having a joint news conference. And it may be, if it's all squeezed into 2 days.
It's going to be very interesting. As you say, Trump is certainly mourning the death of Charlie Kirk. Adam Bolton, Kev Maguire, thank you very much indeed. So the 31-year-old Conservative influencer, Charlie Kirk, has been killed in what the governor of Utah, the Republican governor of Utah, has suggested was a political assassination. One shot, the authorities said, one victim, a targeted attack. Utah authorities suggesting that the shooter wore dark clothing and fired from a roof on campus some distance away. We have a person of interest in custody, the authorities have said. We don't yet know if that is the suspect in this case, but it has sent shockwaves through American politics. Our coverage continues into the death of Charlie Kirk.